All right, we're up and running. So, for the first step for this week, do you have the sheet pulled up on yours, the discussion leader one?
Yes, I'm doing to it right now.
Okay. It just has like 5 categories to pick from. So it wants us to pick a topic. So you can take a second, pick a topic that you want to like talk about within the group. So we'll just take a couple minutes to kind of contemplate like involving either a mix of like life experiences or just things you learned throughout this class, and just kind of talk about like how the issue impacts the workplace and like how we would address the issue in the workplace as well. So yeah, if you have those in front of you, just give me a sec. Just let me know when you're ready or when you have one picked.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I have experience in like all of these. So
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy some of the things that end up happening anymore.
you know,
Just blindside sometimes out of nowhere.
yeah. Okay, I'm ready.
All right. So I think I want to cover work home balance.
Okay.
What topic would you like to kind of talk?
Um, well, I could do two because they're both pretty quick. Substance abuse and divorce, family issues.
Okay. All right. Sweet. Yeah. So we'll just kind of talk about them. So we'll just kind of cover about like you just kind of talk about what your like experiences, like things relating either from the class, personal experiences, stuff like that, and how you think it would impact like workplace. And we'll just kind of go from there. So I guess let's just go ahead and start with substance abuse.
Okay. Yeah. So this one, I mean, I feel like everyone knows someone who struggles with this. Um, but my boyfriend had an experience really recently that so he's the manager, he's the warehouse manager, and he had one of his workers who he was good friends with, and he had suspected that he was using drugs for a long time, and just was really hard for him because he liked the guy, but it was really affecting his work, and he had a bad attitude. But he didn't want him to lose his job because his wife was pregnant with twins, and but they ended up having to let him go. Um, and so, yeah, it was just really tough on him because he was kind of the one that had to make the call and tell the higher ups that, he suspected drug use and things like that. So yeah, it definitely impacts the workplace because they can't perform their job, personality changes, a lot of different things. Um, and it's definitely a hard thing to address because you think, oh, it's just cut and dry, like they're using drugs, they're fired, but there's always more to it than that. So
Yeah. Well, and that almost like brings up because like the last bullet point is workplace dating and relationships. And it's like even though it's not like any kind of romantic relationship or anything, it's still like a form of relationship where there's a whole lot that goes behind it. You know.
right, yeah, because hopefully you have a good relationship with your coworkers and your friends. That's the ideal, but then when issues come up, it makes it harder to deal with for sure.
Right. Yeah, it makes it hard because like the manager, as a manager, you'd want to be someone that like you can work with, talk to, like kind of understand your employees, and that they can kind of be with you, like be comfortable like working with you and talking to you, taking criticism and all that kind of stuff. But then when a major issue comes up, it's like, oh man, you almost have to detach yourself from that. Like
Yeah,
you kind of can't be their gentle coach anymore.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I agree. I don't know that I've ever like directly dealt with someone like having like substance abuse in the workplace necessarily, but I've kind of seen like the flip side where their substance abuse at home has kind of like affected it. Like they had a heck of a hard time. Had family members that had a really hard time like holding down a job, just poor performance. Like really butting heads with fellow coworkers and stuff like that. And it's just, I don't know, all around messy situation.
Yep. It's,
Yeah. Um, let's see. Let's talk. I can kind of launch into home work balance a little bit. So I think
yeah.
it's kind of an interesting thing because, like, I think our younger generations, like, we're less structured with like the 9 to 5 punch in punch out type of deal.
Hmm.
Um, so I did my internship, and the guy who did my internship, my mentor, he was a lot more like relaxed on schedule. He's kind of like, well, just come in. He's like, yeah, I'll probably have 4 to 5 hours worth of work for you every day. So just, come in when you work, when it works for you. If you got other stuff going on, come in later in the day. If you can't come in, just let me know, type of deal. And so he was a lot more laid back because he's like, what's the point of having a smartphone? He's like, I do my emails before I even come into the office. Like he does a lot of things kind of out on the run while he's out doing other things. So he was a lot more in that mindset of like, we got technology, we got a lot of these things. It doesn't have to be necessarily done in the office. But his partner was exactly the opposite because he's like 72 years old and
Yeah.
trying to retire. So he was very much of he'd show up at the office, and if he didn't have anything to do, he'd just sit there and play solitaire on his computer for like 3 hours. And we're all like, "Hey, man, why are you here? Like, there's nothing wrong with if you have nothing to do, like go, like leave, get out of here."
Yeah.
I mean, he's the partner; he gets to make his own decisions. Who knows? But so I just think it's really interesting. And I think the homework balance is super important to like me as I'm trying to think of like starting up a career. And it's really easy to get in the mindset of like, oh man, like I have so many things I need to do. But remember, you got to take time, you got to take care of your family, got to have that off time. And if you balance it right, you'll actually be more productive in your work time rather than just giving it nothing but work.
Right. I agree. And it's definitely a conscious decision that you have to make. Like I know with my dad and my brother, they chose careers knowing like, okay, I want to have time with my family. I want to have time to commit to church callings. I'm going to go in a way in a career that I will be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people, they don't really think about that. And then they're into it and they're like, crap, I have to work 50, 60 hours a week because that's just the expectation and what you do. And that's not what they wanted. So,
Yeah, definitely got to take that into consideration. I think like managers ought to be conscious of that. Like growing up on the farm, I thought my dad was a super good example of kind of helping people manage their homework balance, like their family life and everything like that. Because like we treated our hired hands pretty well. We felt like we gave them responsibility and like a lot of respect and stuff like that. It wasn't like top down dictatorial style. And like some of the guys had worked with us for 30, 35 years. And so they were almost like family to us.
right,
But it was very much of a like, we trusted their judgment on a lot of things. And if they had family appointments, they had doctors, whatever it was that came up, like give them the time that they need to go take care of it. And if issues came up, like as long as they let us know and communicated, it's a lot better to give somebody kind of like the time they need and the tools that they need to be able to take care of those problems. And it turned around really good because the time that they are back and they are there, they're way more committed because they know that if they really need it, that you're more than willing to give them some breathing room. And they just, I don't know, it's really good seeing that kind of come around.
yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I agree with that. So, because it is, it's true. If you feel respected and you feel like your time is valued, and that yeah, if you need the time, you're gonna get it. Then you're definitely gonna be a more committed and loyal employee than just like, nope, you're here, work till you die. It's like, okay, bye. you know.
Yeah, I think that's how you get people who just like, they'll punch out early for lunch and take off and show up late. I think you start to get issues arising out of that. Like you can get bad eggs no matter how well you treat them, but
Yeah.
definitely like the cream of the crop will rise, and you'll really realize the people who have the most potential because they're willing, even though you give them. I mean, you give them as much rope as they need to hang themselves, and
Yep.
sometimes they'll turn it into a really good tool, and that's how you realize the people who should be moving up in your company.
Yep.
So
I agree.
All right. So I guess we can move into divorce slash family issues.
Okay. I mean, not to get too personal, but yeah, when I went through my divorce, work was definitely like a place. I'd been there for like 4 or 5 years, so they knew me really well. And I mean, it definitely affected things. Like, I tried to, for the most part, I think, I stayed really professional with patients. I didn't ever talk about it with them or anything. It was just like, okay, when I'm on the floor, then I'm on. But there were definitely times like in the break room and at lunch and, things would happen. I'm just having a breakdown and bawling. And it was rough, but I had, one of my coworkers, she had been through a divorce, so she, helped me a ton and like referred me to her attorney. And, my other supervisors, I told them what was going on. They were super understanding too. And so it definitely was kind of a safe haven when I was going through all of that. And it was something that was stable and secure when everything else was falling apart. And so I'm really grateful for that. But it definitely, it definitely affected. I definitely was not at my best during that time. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, so yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing is to be supportive and understanding, but also, because there were times when I wanted to talk about it and I needed to talk about it. And there are other times where it's like, I can't talk about it. I'm going to start crying. I'm on the verge of tears all day long. Like, and they were good to, be able to read that. And I would just be like, nope, not now. But they also didn't really overstep and try to tell me what to do or, things like that, or just say like, well, that sucks or, whatever. So I think that's I feel like they kind of handled it in the best way. They ignored it when they needed to, and they also, just were supportive and were just like, okay, whatever you need. So,
That's really good.
yeah,
I don't know. It's hard because that's such a that's such a big kind of event.
yeah,
That it really, I don't know, draws people's attention away because like the whole reason that they're at work is for their family.
right,
And
exactly.
so it's really hard when their motivation for work, uh, starts getting messed with. So
Yep.
I don't know,
So
like
yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing, and it's such a common thing now, unfortunately. But it's like you're gonna work with someone who's dealing with it at some point for sure. So
yeah, there's enough people out there, and the rate's high enough that you're bound to run into it.
yeah.
Um, I guess like from your experience, like what for somebody going in who could potentially be a manager in the first and like face some of the like an issue like this would be like one thing that would probably be really important for them to know, like going in if they have like a coworker or even like they're managing and working with somebody who's going through an event like that.
I would just say um, be compassionate and be kind of give them some leeway, you know. Um, and just I think that's the biggest thing is just say like, hey, I'm here if you need to talk. If not, just keep doing what you're doing. And yeah, it's not the time to have performance reviews. It's not the time to,
Yeah,
you know, do that kind of thing. It's just like just get it through, and once you're through it, then we can address issues if there's issues because you're dealing with so much on every front, and it's something new every day, especially when you're initially going through things. It's like that's all you can handle, and if you can handle that, you're doing really well. Like I have so many friends who, I mean, it wasn't just they got divorced, it was they got the divorce, they lost their job, it's just like everything completely fell apart. And sometimes it's their own fault because they just can't deal with it. Um, so I think just having one safe place is really crucial. And if work can be that place, then you should provide that. So that's what I would say.
well, that's good to know. Yeah, well, I hope that that doesn't, I don't know, hope that it becomes less of a thing and that we'll start. Figuring out how to try to treat other people right.
I know, right? It is. It's so, yeah. But, life's way better now. So
That's
I'm
good.
good.
I'm glad about that. Um, well, we pretty much covered all of them. The only one left is the same-sex relationships. In my opinion, I don't think that that has really any room or space in the workplace. Like, I mean, not saying the same-sex relationship doesn't, but just like in general, it's like if they are, then so what? Like that's a personal life choice that they're making
Right.
outside of work, and if there's an outside harassment occurring because of that or something like that, then that's another issue that needs to be dealt with. But in and of itself, I don't view that as an issue, really.
Right. I agree. I feel like it's the same as any other relationship. It's kind of any other thing. Like, definitely something to be compassionate with and everything like that. But if the rule is no dating within the workplace and no, I don't know, just kind of keeping that private, then it should be the same. It just should be the same standard. I feel like.
Yeah,
So
no, I'd agree. It's I don't know. To me, it's like, well, if it's that big of a thing that they, or I shouldn't say that big of a thing, but if it's a choice they're making, then leave it alone until it affects personal life. It's no different than what kind of music they listen to,
right.
unless they're unless it becomes a problem for their performance or something like that. But more than likely, that'd be another issue.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I do know, like, um, because one of my best friends is gay, and he, in high school and that when he was, coming to terms with that, of just like, okay, this is who I am. Like, what am I going to do about it? It was really hard, and it definitely affected a lot of things in his life. Um, and so I do think it's something to just be, kind of like divorce or other, like, death in a family or anything like that. It's a loss and it's a grieving. And so, it's kind of the same thing. But at the same time, like, yeah, you should still be able to do your job, you know,
Yeah,
just like anyone else dealing with any other of those big problems. So,
I'd agree. All right.
yeah.
Lastly, it's just, do you think that there's any other, let's see, any other issues in society that are likely to impact workplaces in the future?
I think those are kind of the main ones, the big ones. I mean, family issues, that kind of covers all of that, death and um, things like that. That definitely will affect things. But
I'd agree. Um, and then kind of last one is how do we think the workplace will change in the next 10 years? I think I'd kind of like I agree with you that I think that those are really the main issues. There might be smaller ones, but I think most of them just stem back to that. Whether it be somebody is I don't know having any kind of issue with new technologies that are coming out, or I don't know whatever's going on. Like yeah, that's kind of related to like substance abuse, and I think most of them can stem back to that. Just kind of how people are using their personal free time. And you know, as a manager, like in the workplace, you can't really manage what they do outside the workplace. That has to be them.
yeah, I agree.
So,
As far
um,
as
oh, go ahead.
I was just say, as far as how I think the workplace is going to change, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be even more just telecommuting and just kind of, which I think it definitely has pros and cons. It's nice because you can, you don't have to be in the office to work, but then you're expected to work when you're not in the office. So,
Yeah.
definitely goes both ways.
Well, I think that the along with that, the shift will change, and it'll be harder actually from a manager standpoint because it's less of hey, you're in the office. Like the manager won't necessarily see hey, something's wrong. Like their mood's totally changed. Something's going on with this employee. maybe I should talk to them, and then we can address like a situation. I think like a less face-to-face type of work environment could open up the possibility for like it'll make it harder for managers to address these kind of issues because they don't see like, well, something else is going on. They just see, wow, this person's productivity's tanked. Like they don't take their job seriously anymore.
Yep.
So I think that that'll be something that we'll have to be sensitive to, like in the future, is just realizing that we got to figure out a way to make sure that we're staying in contact enough to know when people need a little bit of extra help.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. That's a good point.
Other than that, I think that pretty much wraps up our discussion on this. Unless you had anything to add.
Cool. That's good. Should we talk about doohickeys?
Yeah.
Get that figured out.
You're
Is
all
that really the only thing next week?
So I think so. Let me double check it. I thought it was due next week.
Yeah.
Let's see. Week 14. We have an exam. June 26th. So we have 8 days. So next Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's next Saturday. The doohickey problem will be due. So I would prefer probably to try to get it done. I don't really have any finals going on Monday and Tuesday,
Okay.
so I can probably get working on it then. I guess we'll just kind of. I'm trying to think. Yeah, we can just kind of attack it. We'll look through it, and we can put together like maybe on the group email just like what components we should address, and then because that'll give Derek a chance to kind of weigh in as well, since he's not here.
Yeah. So it's workplace society, layoffs, and organized labor, I think are the
Layoffs and organized labor. Okay. I think the hardest one will be layoffs, probably.
yeah.
Mm,
I have no experience with organized labor, so I'm like,
all right, we're gonna be leaning heavily on the material then.
yeah.
So,
So
okay.
do you want to email or do you want me to email? I should be able to get it done early in the week next week too.
Yeah. Trying to think what's best.
No, but
Yeah, I guess because you'd probably be technically the group leader. We don't have a discussion going on.
okay.
So if you want to go ahead and if you want to email it in,
Yeah, I can do that. For sure. I totally lost track of who's doing that.
yeah. At this point, we're like, we've already done it a couple times. So
Yeah, you know the drill. So, so on your grades, we only have to be group leader like 2 or 3 times, right?
yeah, so we have to be group leader twice, where we write up the full report, and then any times after that, all we do is submit the link. So we submit the video, but we don't have to do a write up.
Gotcha. Yeah. So my grade is just saying that I'm like have 60% on that. So I'm sure it's just because he has it.
Oh, yeah, probably because I don't.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he has any way of like keeping track. At least when he like pulls up the assignment and sees that there's only the link, he probably doesn't have any way to keep track of like, oh, that's their third time doing it. So
Yeah, I'm not worried about it at this point.
all right. Well, sounds good. I guess we'll get that email organized and we'll see what Derek kind of wants to do, and we'll.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just send it now while I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
So.
Sounds good. Well,
Cool.
see you around then.
All right. Thanks. See
Uh-huh.
ya.
Bye.
Okay.